everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beard, the DRF race of the day for Friday, October the 14th is race number 9 at Keeneland. Our race of the day is presented by DRF Bets. It's a grade 3 going a mile and a half on the turf. Let's take a look at this overflow field for the Sycamore. Looks like a decent betting race on paper. So many evenly matched horses. 12 in the body of the race, 13 through 16 on the also eligible list. The 7, Mira Mission, 7-2 on the morning line. Tepid favorite, had the lead last time out when stretched out for the first time in the Sword Dancer and just got a little bit late.
Yeah, he did. He's in very good form right now. I don't, know that I would necessarily want to take him if he is indeed the favorite in this race, but you certainly can't knock his recent form, Dan. He comes into this the right way, but there are cases to be made for a lot of these horses.
Several of them as well. Arclo down towards the inside has been banging around for a long time. He's banked over $3 million. As we take a look at page 2 of our entry card, some nice horses breaking from the outside as well, especially the 12 Cellist, who's done some good work at big prices in the past over wet turf courses. Let's throw up the Timeform US pace projector for this race. Not sure if I'm going to agree with Timeform US that this pace is going to be fast, and I also think that it will be a credit who makes the early running and not the tactical Mira Mission.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that count. On both those counts, actually. I didn't necessarily see Mira Mission on the lead in here. I don't think they're going to be going that fast. It is a big field, though. Maybe you'll get some horses, going for position, and so they won't be walking early. But I'd be surprised if it was fast.
Channel Maker, the number 6, another hard hitter that's banked $3.6 million in his career. I would expect him to be close to the pace. If the pace is fast, you see the number 1 Chicklet. That would be Arclo lurking at the back of the pack. He would benefit from a fast pace up front. He is a very consistent, solid horse from the Brad Cox barn. Joel Rosario takes the mount. This is only his 3rd start of the year. He ran really well in his seasonal debut off the long layoff from the Bowling Green, considering he had some trouble. And last time out at Kentucky Downs, Mike, he kind of made an early move, and maybe it just wasn't his day over a course that has swallowed up good horses in the past.
That's true. To me, it's a hard excuse for me to make for Arclo for the most recent start. Not only is he a horse who, in the past anyway, and I know he's 8 years old now, but in the past, he loves Kentucky Downs. He always runs well there, and you sort of feel like they pointed for that race. Yeah. And to me, he was just bad in there. And we'll look at the replay a little bit later, but he was up close to the pace. You'll see him just stop finding through the stretch and wind up well beaten. I was disappointed with his last race, Dan, and I don't know that I would want to go back to him at a short price in here. And I think he almost has to take money. He can win this race. He's a really good horse, and I liked his return from the layoff, but he was bad last time.
He'll have to face the horse that beat him last time out. That's the next door neighbor, the number 2 Red Knight, who won the Sycamore back in 2020 for Bill Mott. He is 2 for 2 under the tutelage of Michael Maker. He beat 6 of these horses in that Turf Cup at Kentucky Downs. We're going to watch that race right now. And Red Knight is just in raging good form right now. It seems like as he's gotten older, he's learned to relax a little bit more in his races, and I think that's helped him.
That's true. Yeah, he was a pretty difficult horse to ride early on, but he's always had talent. And, he's come back this year for his 2 starts for Maker. He's 2 for 2. He's run really well in both of those. You see Arclo here in this replay. He's down on the rail there, the number 4, just fading through the stretch. This horse made a pretty big run. He's dead game to hold on at the end of this race. A horse who has no problem with the mile and a half. He likes Keeneland just fine. Plenty to like here.
8th place finisher from that race came back to win a graded stake at Woodbine over the Tapeta. That was the Durham Cup, 101 buyer speed figure. The 3 is Admission Office. Admission Office is another solid horse. I think he got really good towards the end of 2020 into 2021. This year, he is a graded stakes winner at Churchill Downs. His last start was the Turf Cup. I thought the trip was there. He saved ground. He just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, one of those horses exiting that Turf Cup. We'll see if he can, sort of rebound a little bit. He didn't run terribly in there, but he also, didn't run great and wasn't, super competitive in there. And he's just a horse who overall, he's pretty good. I think the mile and a half is fine for him. And he's got races that'll put him in the frame, but I feel like he's definitely going to need his absolute best to beat this field.
The 4 Highland Chief is a fresh face for Graham Motion and John Velasquez, winner of the Grade 1 Man of War, 3 starts back. Thought he ran okay when they cut him back in the Manhattan, going 1.25 miles. He was sort of in between horses, made a 3-wide bid. The trip was fine. He just wasn't going to catch Tribhuvan, who got loose on the lead in that race. The Bowling Green last time out, he was close to a solid pace, but I think if you wanted to take a horse coming out of the Bowling Green, wouldn't it have been Arclo, considering the layoff and all the trouble he was in?
Yeah, that's how I looked at the race for sure. I would definitely rather have Arclo out of there. I guess the question would be, do I want either of these horses now? Because Arclo has since come back and run very poorly. This horse ran, I thought, very poorly without a real excuse there in that Bowling Green. I liked him prior to that. He has the big win in the Man of War that you mentioned back in May. I thought he ran really well that day. And I guess, Dan, you could say, you know what? He's just better at 1.5 miles. And so stretching out is going to help him. But he's another horse who probably feels like he'll take money in here. I mean, he did not run well last time.
A horse I definitely want to use at a price is the number 5, A Credit. This is a lightly raced 4-year-old. I don't think we've seen his best yet. He's 30-1 on the morning line. He was that sort of price when he wired them in the Dueling Grounds Derby in his final start at 3. He's had 2 1-mile races to sharpen him up at Kentucky Downs. The runner-up from his last race came back to win the Knickerbocker last week in New York with a 98 buyer. If they leave him alone on the lead, and that's an if, because Channel Maker does have the speed to keep him honest, I think he could take this field a long way.
I agree with that. I think he could get the right trip in here. He's obviously got more upside than just about everybody in this race. And really the one time that they went, a longer distance with him, he did win that Dueling Grounds Derby on the lead, albeit over yielding turf. He's got to improve, but I feel like he's catching a lot of these horses with the credentials, Dan. He's catching a lot of them off of poor performances.
Yet another multi-millionaire in this field is the number 6, Channel Maker. He tired in the Sword Dancer last time out. He was put on a chase to go after Tribhuvan, who's a pretty fast horse, and maybe that just isn't the right trip for him at this point in his career. Were you surprised that Bill Mott didn't send him to the Joe Hirsch, a race he's won 2 years in the past? Of course, he had Warlike Goddess in this race, but at the very least, you would have thought Channel Maker, okay, he loves that course, he loves that race, and he would have provided some pace for Warlike Goddess. Is this sort of a sign that maybe Bill thinks he's not as good as he was last year or the year before?
Certainly could be viewed that way. He kind of looks like a horse who's not as good, Dan. He did come off the layoff, and I thought he looked pretty good winning the Elkhorn right here at Keeneland, a race where they didn't put him on the lead that day either, but I thought he won that race pretty convincingly. And he had an excuse in his next start, the Manhattan, where he just totally blew the start. But after that, man, I know he won 2 starts back going 1.5 miles. That was not an impressive win, and he was pretty bad. Like another horse coming in off of a very poor performance.
Certainly has the back class to win this race, however. I think Louis Sy is going to be real aggressive leaving the gate. Mira Mission is the 7, and Mira Mission looked like he was going to win the Turf Classic at Churchill Downs on Derby weekend. He ran right by Santine, and Santine came back and beat him. And it looked like he was going to win the Sword Dancer. His first time stretching out to 1.5 miles. The race we're going to show you right now, he's had a good tracking trip in the second flight. He blows past Tribhuvan. It looks like he's on his way. He'll get run down by the closers. Is it a sign that this distance is a little bit too far for him? Did he make an early move? Was the pace hot for him? What was the excuse?
There is no excuse. I thought he ran a good race in here. I didn't think he had an excuse to get run down in this race. Maybe at the end of the day, Dan, sometimes you just get beat by a better horse. And I realized that Gufo can be a little bit of an in and outer, but on his best day, as far as I could tell in the Sword Dancer, Gufo was just the better horse and came and ran the course over. Mira Mission still ran well in there. He's obviously in really good form this year for Ian Wilkes. And I guess he showed that he could handle 1.5 miles well enough last time, Dan. All those things conspire to make him a contender in here. I don't think I'd bet him as the favorite.
Temple is the number 8, another horse that you mentioned, that coming in off of a bad race, just didn't really fire his best shot at Kentucky Downs last time out. This is a horse that may not love that surface. He was up close to the pace. There was just nothing there in the stretch. We've seen this horse in the past. He does have ability. He does have the tactical speed to work out good trips. Michael Maker keeps the faith, and that's saying something.
That is saying something. He is one of the horses, too, though. That was at Kentucky Downs, and maybe for him, at least, you could make the argument that that's just not his course. He's the horse who I kind of feel like he's a cut below the top horses, this longer distance turf level. I think he might be a couple below the really good ones, but he's tactical. He's got some fast races. He can get a good trip in here. It's going to be a price in this race. There are ways to talk yourself into this horse.
Number 9, British Royalty won the third Jewel of Canada's Triple Crown. The breeder is going 1.5 miles over yielding turf, and it looks like he's coming into this race in good form off this performance in the Grade 3 Singspiel, going 1 3/8 miles. We see him sitting off of the pace. He's going to make a good run into this, and he's going to finish a solid second. My one concern is that British Royalty got beat by Channel Maker in the Grand Couturier 3 starts back, and I couldn't make an excuse for him.
That's how I look at him too, Dan. I mean, there was really no excuse to be had. I feel like he's another horse who's probably just a couple low. The other problem with this race is he's got a great trip. He gets out finished from behind in this race. It's not like, horses got in front of him and he, tried really hard. He just couldn't catch. He got run down from behind in that race. I thought that was a pretty disappointing loss. And I just think he's in a little bit tough here.
Chad Brown's been very patient with the number 10 Balthus, a beautifully bred son of Galileo. He's lightly raced. He has upside. He's gone through his conditions. He worked out a nice trip to win a second-level allowance at Saratoga last time out, going 1.5 miles. He was a bit eager and up close to the pace. He settled into the pocket. But once he gets to the outside and set sail after this horse on the lead, it was only a matter of time before he grinded on by.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't think you're going to be blown away by this win, but he did win it pretty comfortably in the end. Another good trip for this horse, another real step in the right direction. Just feels like he just keeps getting better race by race for Chad Brown. He still has forward to go. The horse that he did run down there, Dan, A Journey to Freedom, he's no superstar, but he's more than held his own in graded stakes races, going 1.5 miles in the past. He's run against horses like, Arclo in the past, and he was, sort of right there with those horses. He's not a real pushover. This horse won very easily, and as opposed to just about everybody else we've already talked about, he still has upside.
Another mystery is up next. Rock Solid Illinois bred, who's also cross-entered at Hawthorne, a race he likely would be the favorite in, but for a much lesser purse. He just missed in the Turf Cup at Kentucky Downs last time out. He's as honest as the day is long. You give him a firm turf course, he's going to come with a run, usually at a price, and if he runs here, he'll be a price again.
Yeah, he will. He's a horse that you could easily use at a price in this race. He shows up every single time. It does feel like, some of these horses, all things being equal, might be a little bit better than him, but it's far from conclusive. He's run well in each of his last 2 starts against Red Knight.
The 12th Cellist is going to be a big price, and he has some races that make him somewhat interesting. That Louisville 3 starts back at Churchill, going 1.5 miles. He was 3-4 wide throughout. He got the job done. I was very surprised how aggressive they were at Colonial 2 starts back. And last time out in the Arlington Million, A, they cut him all the way back in distance, which is probably not his best. And B, I'm not trusting anything that happened on that racetrack. It just was a turf course that a lot of folks had complaints about.
Right. I don't care about his last race either. I did like his Louisville when he won at 1.5 miles, 3 starts back. I don't love the field that he beat that day, but I do think he ran pretty well. And he's another horse at a big price. I'm not going to argue if you like him, because to me, there are too many horses in this race who are, I think you just want to be a little bit wary of, or coming in off of bad performances.
13 through 16 on the also eligible list. If another mystery opts out, I guess Highest Honors has a little bit of a chance here for Chad Brown. Kind of made an early move at Kentucky Downs last time out. Ran an okay 4th, but he's a horse that's been beaten by a few of these in the past.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his. I realize that he's, taken to turf pretty well since they switched over. I don't like that horse.
Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for all the latest DRF video franchises. Top pick time. Looks like a pretty wide open race on paper. I've lost enough money on Mira Mission. No, I haven't. I think I'm going to give him another chance. I do think Arclo will go off favored in this race based on his reputation, based on his affinity for being 1.5 mile type of horse. I wouldn't take anything less than 5-1 on Mira Mission, however, and that's a little bit light. I do like your horse, Balthus, and you rarely get Chad at a price, and I think he'll be a playable price.
Yeah, I think he will too. I don't love this horse, Dan. I just wanted to go outside of, sort of the logical horses in here who, again, I just feel like I don't want to take horses at short prices who are coming off of bad races without apparent excuse. And I agree with you. I think Arclo is going to be the favorite in here. And so I couldn't take him. I put him second. I'll try Balthus and hope he gets another good trip and takes one more step forward.
10-1-2-4 for Mike, 7-10-5-2 for me. It's the DRF race of the day presented by DRF Bets.